San Diego Sports Leader, it is the mighty 1090, 34-28 over the weekend. San Diego State wins again. They are now 5-0. They will be playing on the road at UNLV upcoming this weekend. It is always a pleasure for us when we get a chance to say hello to the head coach of the Aztecs. He is Rocky Long. Rocky, Darren Smith, good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you, Darren, as always.
I like it. Back-to-back weeks. I feel like, we're dancing again.
There we go.
You ever been 5-0 in your career?
I was, as an assistant coach, I've been on a team that was 5-0. I've never been 5-0 as a head coach. No, it's uncharted territory. It's kind of nice. It just makes the next game more important.
So it doesn't feel any different to you?
No, it doesn't really. I mean, you get into a groove during the season, and you just go about your business and try to make it happen again.
Rocky, it's interesting, to watch this game over the weekend and just to see, you make an impact there on the scoreboard. People were still filing into the stadium. They were still out in the parking lot. I mean, just the way that happened so quickly. Were you fully engaged and paying attention when Juwan Washington took it the distance?
Yeah, we thought we had a chance for that to happen. Bobby Houck did a great job of scouting them and designed a return that should have worked if they did what they've done all year and what they did to us last year. And they just happened to do exactly the thing that we anticipated, and then obviously the players executed it unbelievably well. But Bobby did a nice job of designing that, and then when the players executed and they did the same thing we expected, it worked out just like we thought it might.
So this was good coaching here. This was good execution because this is not a coincidence. Now you've had two different players who have taken kickoffs back for touchdowns. Juwan Washington being the most recent. And I'm sure I could go back and I can count it up all the different ways, all the different times that you've done it. Why is San Diego State so good at this? Why are you guys so good at returning the football on kickoffs?
Well, number one, it's the return guys. I mean, you have to be good at it to have a chance. And some guys have a natural feel for it, and we just happen to have a couple guys that have a natural feel for it. But then Bobby does a great job of designing, scouting the opponent, how they cover, who covers, who does a good job of covering, who doesn't do a good job. And then he does a nice job of designing the return to take advantage of the way they're covering. But it always comes down to the guy having a feel for it. But then the players seem to like it and execute it well also.
Yeah, I would think. I mean, how much time is spent? I mean, do you get the sense that you're spending any more time on special teams or, your special teams coach? Do you get the sense, are you spending more time than you have in previous years or previous coaching stops?
No, we spend the exact same amount of time on special teams every week, and we've been really good on kickoff returns, and we're pretty good at kickoff. We have not been real good at punting the ball or punt returns, and we're spending the same amount of time on those too, and I don't know if those are harder or not, but we have a knack for the kickoff returns, that's for sure.
Rocky Long joining us on San Diego Sports Leader, the mighty 1090. Rocky, for me as the viewer here, it seemed like, this game itself, I know I'm trying to come up, I'm not clever enough to come up with a different word besides chippy, but did it feel that way for you on the sideline here? Just some of the penalties, obviously we'll get into the eye gouging stuff in a second, but was that your sense of what the game was, chippy?
Well, I guess it was chippy. I mean, that's what everybody thinks it is. I guess the Stanford game was chippy too. What happens is anytime you get two teams that think they're physical and run a certain kind of offense that makes it a very, very, very physical game, eventually people get mad at each other, and that's the way it works. When you go against a spread team and stuff, you don't see near as much as that because there's not as many people banging into each other and hitting each other constantly.
Aren't you guys always chippy, though?
I don't think we're always chippy. I mean, I don't think we have that issue against everybody. It's just the guys that try to stand up to us that we do.
But the term I always hear and use is, that your guys play not only to the whistle, you play through the echo of the whistle. And that's kind of your personality. Again, I don't want to confuse chippy with cheap here, but it just seems like that is a style. If that's the way the game's going to go, to me, Rocky, it feels like it sort of fits in with the way you guys prefer to play.
Well, I think we prefer to play a physical type of football game. That's why we're in the kind of offense we're in. That's the way we try to run the defense, and it ends up we try to make it a physical game because we think that we can stay in there when it's a physical game because there's teams that we play that have more talent than we do. And Northern Illinois is kind of a replica of us. They fight the talent issue too, being in the MAC conference, but they're very, very strong and big up front. They're very, very physical. They play a physical game. And whenever you play teams like that, there's players that get mad and upset at each other.
So not out of character for them. They didn't come in here trying to be somebody that they weren't. That's just who Northern Illinois is.
No, that's who they are.
And that's who you guys are as well. Rocky Long joining us on San Diego Sports Leader, the Mighty 1090. I must say, I got kind of a kick out of you and your entire coaching staff being asked about what happened at the bottom of the pile. Whereas it seemed like there should be a national hearing about it. It seemed like it wasn't that much of a shock. Unfortunate, but not that much of a shock for you and the coaching staff that thing still happens in football in 2017.
It wasn't a shock. I mean, that stuff happens less now than it did way back when I was playing. When I was playing, there was all kinds of stuff that happened under there. It doesn't happen near as often now as it used to, but it still happens from time to time. It's not unusual for stuff like that to happen underneath the pile. What's unusual is that TV caught it.
Right.
That's what's unusual. So everybody got to see it.
So it's not quite the capital crime that some people suggest it is. Now you're inviting me to ask you this question here. What's the worst thing that ever happened to you in the bottom of a pile? What's the worst thing you've ever done in the bottom of a pile?
Well, I'm not going to tell you the worst thing I've ever done in the bottom of a pile. But
Come on.
The worst thing that ever happened to me in the bottom of a pile was I actually got bit. I had teeth marks on my arm from somebody biting me under the pile.
Who did that?
Well, I don't remember the team because it actually happened twice in my career. Only one of them showed the teeth marks. The other one didn't actually show the teeth marks, but it sure felt like someone was biting me.
Now, why are you being shy here about what you did at the bottom of the pile? You're protecting an image? You have long-term security here. Everybody loves Rocky Long.
Well, I just don't like to put myself in those situations because now I think it was the wrong thing to do, and I should have never done it. But sometimes emotion catches the best of all of us. We have some really good kids that did some emotional things on Saturday that are a little out of character for them, but not totally out of character because they're football players.
Was it worse than what we saw on Saturday night, what you were guilty of at the bottom of a pile?
No, it wasn't worse than that.
Okay. So in real time, Rocky, and I'm just sort of curious the way this works, because I know afterwards the head coach at NIU, Rod Perry, came out and said, listen, he suspended the player, going to get on a call, going to call Rocky Long. We publicly apologize. We will privately apologize as well. How aware of you what happened in real time? Sidelines for people out there, it's a lot easier to watch this stuff on television. When you're down there, it's total chaos. Rocky's paying attention to the offense, defense, special teams, etc. But how aware are you of what's happening in real time that Penny has his eyes poked at the bottom of a pile?
Pretty quick. I saw him coming off the field holding his face, and I didn't know exactly what it was. And obviously, they took him back to see the doctor and all that kind of stuff. And then the trainers, when they get an opportunity, will come up and tell you what happened. And they came up and told me that Rashad had been poked in the eye and that right now he couldn't see, but it looked like he was going to be fine in a little while. And so I knew right away. And someone asked me if we told the players. Well, the players, they hear that stuff before I do. They sit back there and listen to the doctors when they're not in the game. So our players knew right away that had happened, and I think that added to the intensity of the game.
Some wonder, though, is there something that could be done during the game? If the referee doesn't see it, I don't know what you could do if you were in that situation where one of your players did such a thing and got caught on camera doing it. I mean, can you pull the player out of the game? Can you retroactively have the referees go back and look at it? Are you satisfied with the way this has been handled overall?
Yeah, I thought it was handled right.
Okay.
I mean, the officials didn't see it, so they can't call anything. What they would have called was a personal foul. And the guy, if you get 2 personal fouls in a game, you get kicked out of the game. So they probably wouldn't have kicked him out of the game, but they would have called a personal foul and given him a 15-yard penalty. But they didn't see it. And, I don't think that's reviewable on instant replay. I guess maybe they ought to make those things reviewable on replay. I don't know. But, I didn't know it was such a big deal until I heard that everybody saw it on TV. And
Exactly.
They actually saw the kid doing it. And, I've talked to Coach Carey since that time. We've talked 2 or 3 times. And supposedly the kid's a nice kid that made a really stupid decision. And they're doing the appropriate thing to make amends.
Okay, so it happens and you move on. Rocky Long joining us on San Diego Sports Leader, the Mighty 1090. You've coached some great running backs since you've been at Sdsu. I don't know if it's possible to answer this question, but where does Rashad Penny fit in? You've coached some great ones, some ones that have gone on into the pros here. How does he stack up? How does he compare to the other guys that you've had?
Well, he's as good as anybody we've ever had. Obviously, they all have different styles. and different styles lead to their success or lack of success. I mean, we had DJ Pumphrey last year, and he was a darter and a slasher and a make you miss in the hole guy and outrun you. And Rashad is more of a slasher. He sees a gap, he heads through the gap, and nobody's going to slow him down with an arm tackle. Every once in a while they trip him up accidentally, but they're not going to slow him down unless they actually put a shoulder pad into him and hang on to him. So they have different styles. I think that if you're talking about moving to the next level, Rashad is more sought after than DJ because Rashad's big. Rashad's 220 pounds. He can run fast, and he's not afraid to run into you or run through you. So as an NFL player, he's a much better prospect.
Do you wake up every morning and say, man, thank goodness he made the decision to come back to San Diego State? Because I wondered at the time, too. I'm sure he had people in his ears, and I don't know what ultimately, if you were involved or if others were involved, but he made the decision. He's come back. You know, he's right there amongst the nation's leaders. I would wake up every day and go, man, I don't know why he chose to come back here, but I'm certainly glad he did.
We are glad he did, and you know, most of the time we don't get too involved. We talk to him about it, and we tell him what our take is on the situation, but then we leave those decisions up to the kid and his family. They decide what's best, and his family wants him to get an education. Now, Rashad himself wanted to be the number one back. He wanted to be the guy getting the ball all the time. He wasn't upset that he was the backup last year, but he wanted to be the star guy. So, and he got that going this year, and we're glad he's back.
I'm sure 5-0, 19-21 in the respective polls. The Associated Press and the coaches poll, 34-28 over the weekend. San Diego State takes care of Northern Illinois University. I heard you on this radio station before the season started, Rocky, talking a little bit how you were going to rely on underclassmen, specifically freshmen. And you had a great line about how for every freshman you start, you end up with a loss, which I'd never heard before. One of these great old coaching sayings here. Whether it's Tariq Thompson or anybody else, the freshman contributions from you guys, could you tell us a little bit about just how they've not only contributed here, but not been overwhelmed by the moment?
Well, Tariq's kind of a special deal. I think that his father, who played at San Diego State, and his high school coaches did a great job preparing him. I mean, there's things he does at the safety position that obviously we didn't teach him because we don't have enough time to this point to have taught him that. So he's got a great feel for it. So he came in probably as a player more mature than most of them. So that helped him. We're still struggling with our freshmen that are playing in the offensive line. I mean, we played another freshman this last weekend, a true freshman this past weekend because of an injury. And so we have a bunch of young guys out there, and we really struggled running the ball last week because we were playing a very physical, aggressive team, and most of that is just experience. Most of that is just knowledge. It's not want to because they want to. And we're still struggling in the offensive line because of the rookies out there. And if we have to put a couple linebackers or a couple safeties in that are backing up right now, we'll struggle there too.
What would have happened, out of curiosity, had Tariq one-on-one with the quarterback here on his return, on the interception return for a touchdown? What would have happened to him had he been caught in the open field by the quarterback?
A lot of people would have made a lot of fun of him. But when you watch it on film, I thought it was really a good move he put on the quarterback. But on film, you can tell the quarterback wants no part of it. The quarterback doesn't want to tackle anybody.
Yeah, that doesn't fly with Rocky. I'm just guessing that would never fly. When a defensive player gets caught by an unathletic quarterback in that spot, no way, right?
No, that's embarrassing.
Well, it seems like, again, I love that line that you said earlier, and it seems like some of these guys have contributed. UNLV this week, it's on ESPN2. As a matter of fact, I did hear just a little while ago our friend Kirk Morrison is going to be on the call on ESPN2, so that's good, a familiar voice. We'll talk with Kirk later on in the week. Rocky, I know you don't get really wrapped up in this sort of stuff, but is there a difference just being on ESPN, being on the national network? CBS Sports Line, or CBS Sports is as well, but is there a difference here just in terms of the exposure you feel like you get being on ESPN versus CBS?
I think it's very similar. I don't think it's a much bigger deal. I mean, what I like about it is ESPN's, they have the same number of commercials, but their commercials are shorter. CBS's commercials last forever, and we get a lot of rest that way, but it seems like the game lasts forever too. And ESPN has commercials. Theirs is about a minute shorter, most of their commercials, so it makes the game go faster, so I like that part of it.
Huh. I had no idea. I didn't realize that. I usually just buckle down at about 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, and I go to bed at 11 o'clock whenever all the games are over. So that's good for you. And listen, it's Monday, Rocky, and, I don't really even know what the question I'm asking is here, but you are on the road and you are at UNLV upcoming this weekend, and just an unimaginable tragedy in Las Vegas overnight over the last 24 hours. As far as you know, is it all systems go for you guys? Anything changed for the Aztecs and for the Running Rebels for Saturday?
There's some things that they're trying to decide on what they're going to do at the game, as far as memorizing it or memorializing what has happened, those kind of things. But other than that, I haven't heard anything that has changed. Now, there's always a possibility that things could change. But right now, it seems like everything's go, and that we're going to play at the same time and everything like that. It sure puts a damper on the excitement of going to Vegas. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, the sports though does play a role in the return to normalcy, and everybody uplifting spirits, etc. And I'm sure that will be an emotional building on Saturday for the Running Rebels hosting you guys. Rocky, we appreciate it. Continued success. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Darren.